Penn State week is upon us, and as most weeks begin for Coach Harsin, his staff, and his players, he gets things rolling with a weekly press conference. He talks about in this conference wrapping up Alabama State and looking ahead to Penn State. Let's talk about what he said and our takeaways from it. My name is Kyle, the editor of the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks. Our content here and on our podcast network may tend to be Auburn sports heavy, but if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. If you're new to this channel, be sure to hit subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any content. Thank you to members of the Booster Club, like Joe Rudolph, who helped produce videos like this. Coach Harsin held his weekly press conference, and while I will say that there's probably not a lot of stuff to take away from it, it is kind of good to hear where his head at, and thus vicariously the rest of his team head is at, leading into a very big week for Auburn in a true test, the first true test of the 2021 season. Now, you can go check out his press conference anywhere on social media or even here on YouTube. Just type it in. You'll be able to get the full reaction and full discussion from him himself. But I want to kind of summarize things and just talk about a few of the items that I took away with that maybe help you kind of get the gist of what he was saying. Overall discussion points for him, and I'll be honest with you, I felt like it was a lot of coach speak. Now, I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way. I think, honestly, this is a week that's a little bit unique for him, his staff, and his players, and thus there's not a lot of answers that he can give. So I don't mean coach speak in the negative way, just there's not really much concrete stuff they can give the reporters at this moment, being everything so new, going on the road for the first time to Penn State. Also talked a lot about handling circumstances and the team's response to it. Now, I think that's a reflection of things that happened in the Alabama State game, but I also think that's his interest level in seeing how his team is going to handle circumstances that happen during prep week for Penn State and also during the travel. He even brought up in a scenario like, what happens if the bus is late? How do we respond then? He's a very detail-oriented guy, and I think he's going to learn more about his team this week than he has in a long, long time, and probably have more to say next week. Let's hit on a couple of the broader points. Talked a lot about the first week prep for an away game and what that looks like. He even addressed and said that with a lot of different coaches from different perspectives on how that's done, that's been kind of intriguing to see and happen. So they'll figure a lot of that out, and hopefully in such a big week where they kind of work out the kinks when they go to some of these other road games, it won't be such a mystery after this point. He even addressed a couple of players to watch at Penn State, especially wide receivers, the quarterback play. He was really complimentary of their veteran quarterbacks, so something that we're going to have to watch out for as well. He did not elaborate on Shaun Shivers and his status on the team in terms of the injury or whatever else medically is going on. Obviously, a lot of rumors out there. The important thing to note is that he is still not available to participate, and I'm guessing he's probably not going to be available for this week. Just the kind of the way it feels to me right now, but Coach Harsin did say he hopes to have them back and others who weren't available sooner rather than later. He was very complimentary in this press conference of a few things: his defensive players and the defensive staff. He was also complimentary of Alabama State, and I think he got a respect for how good the talent could be even at that level coming in here to Auburn. I mean, they kind of put up just a small bit of a fight at the beginning of the game, so he was very complimentary of them. He also talked about the bloop kickoff and addressed small details because of this, but also the need to focus on what matters. This was my takeaway of that kind of discussion with the reporter who asked that question. Is he said, yeah, that thing's important for us to figure out so that doesn't happen again, but that was such a weird little thing that's probably never ever going to take place again, and most teams aren't going to do it, that it's not really something that ultimately matters outside of cleaning up a few reps during practice on how they might respond in that situation again. He was asked about Jarquez Hunter and his record-setting run that he had and just his game overall, and has really been impressed with him this, not just preseason, but the season and how he's gotten started. He was actually surprised, too, that this was the longest run in Auburn history dating back to 1936, which I was surprised as well. I thought for sure in the Malzahn era we had had something like that happen already, but I guess not. Even I forgot some of those stats. Obviously, one of the big questions from the reporters was about crowd noise and how the team was going to handle it. Coach Harsin addressed that it's hard to simulate that type of environment, even in Jordan Hare Stadium, and even with the ability they have to make noise and things like that on the loudspeakers. But they're going to do what they can. He addressed that the best overall medicine for that, though, is their preparation for how they're going to get ready for this week. and getting in those routines, handling those small details, and only focusing on what they can control. That's the best way they can prep for that type of noise, because you just need to go and understand it's going to be loud, it's going to be crazy, and it's going to cause a few problems, but we need to respond to them in the proper manner. He was asked about Bo's performance and the quarterback performance overall, and he complimented both Bo and TJ. He did address the turnover with Bo and even said that, some of that and the other things that happened that weren't exactly 100% what he wanted out of Bo were obviously on him, but even more so with the wide receivers. He said the wide receivers got to help him out and stop dropping balls, and the offensive line play has to be consistent. Now, I do want to say that he was very adamant about saying how the offensive line has improved. And let me tell you, I think this is a very good sign, that if he's willing to say that out in public, that tells you where they've come from and where they're going. Still says they got to clean up things, got a little bit more consistency. But the fact, I think, that he's found his group, especially when you look at the updated 2 deep with the offensive left and right guard being cleared up on who's actually going to be starting with Keandre Jones, especially, I think that's just going to be a huge weight off his shoulders. And lastly, he was asked about the students and how energetic they had been for him. I think that's one of the biggest surprises for Coach Harsin is the enthusiasm, not just by the fans, but by the students. For an 11 o'clock game, mind you, that how pumped they were to be there and just to support them. Now, he did say, talking about that awkward situation when Bo trying to quiet everybody on offense, that was weird. He even said, look, that was funny and it probably won't ever happen again. It was just a little bit of too much excitement at the wrong time. So that's my overall breakdown of what Coach Harsin said in his press conference leading up to Penn State. I want to hear from you now. What did you take away from it? Things that you heard, if you have, or if you just have impressions about what we talked about here. I want to hear from you down in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this type of content, please help support it by smashing that like button. If you want more content from us, be sure to hit the subscribe and notification bell so you never miss an upload or a live stream. There's also other ways to help support what we do here listed in the description for this video, such as the E2C Network Booster Club, or even becoming a channel member here by hitting that join button. Thank you for tuning into the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks. War Eagle.